Okay, guys, let's start with the pre-game plan for Wednesday in the third week of March. Yesterday, I took a sales, reversal sales, which ended up being break even. Quickly to that, what I've expected after price failing to create a low in that sense, and after that internal medium inducement, price shifted momentum towards the upside, and within that weak supply. Why it's a weak supply? Because it failed to create a low. I expected a reaction inducement towards the downside and a follow through, which gave me the possibility to sell after having that internal medium inducement. So price took liquidity to the left, and on my time window, exactly on my time window, I got my lower time frame confirmation in a very nice bearish block, which is my POI in that sense. It's a reactional block POI in that sense, as we have still targets left to go to as the extreme supply area, which would be our destination and efficiency of the pullback, and our potential target from a structure cycle perspective. What we also do want to take in consideration for now is that we haven't mitigated into, we have mitigated into the 50%. In that sense, this reactionable PI can either respect, which price will reveal anyway. So if that PI is a small money trap, we're gonna have inducement towards the downside and a follow through. If that happens, we have a confirmation that can be very nicely a smart money trap, which led us into potential buying opportunities. But for now, we do expect a reaction from that internal supply, which has taken liquidity. This is where I was selling yesterday. For now, we do see that the price developed, but to quickly hop on the higher time frame, since we want to do it structurally for people to understand, we're gonna go to the weekly to recap again what was happening, how the weekly candle has closed last week, and what the structure and the liquidity is showing us. So just quickly to recap our structure, it's very high time frame, so not that important, just for the people who are new. We're seeing our bearish structure currently on the more so monthly time frame from that lower high, which has been created after absorbing the demand area, leading into a push higher, building up liquidity, and inducements leading to internal break and changing momentum, which led price to break that lower low and create in that sense the new bearish leg. On discount areas, price accumulated, as we can see. We took that liquidity, which was the fuel to push the price higher, and in that sense, after meeting 50% of the bearish leg, price ended up pushing lower. So what is very nicely to see here is, and which I'm gonna take in consideration, and it's maybe the only information I need from the weekly monthly time frame, is that after price pushed higher and build up liquidity towards the downside, what I would like to see in that sense is the second tap, taking liquidity to then continue higher. This is where I would expect that supply area, which would be the extreme supply area, to create really lower lows. So this would give me a lot of confidence. But since the price has built liquidity and failed to create to break that previous high, to have the second tap, more so building up liquidity and leaving liquidity open, and afterwards creating the lower low, I do expect a reaction from that extreme supply area, which potentially can push price lower into the weekly bullish push, which I'm gonna take in consideration in a moment. Just give me a second. But more than a retracement into buyer sensitivity areas as this one or the extreme, which can lead to higher highs, I do not think that price will break a low. More so continue targeting that liquidity, since we also do have pretty nice areas above, as the PI here, which took liquidity, had a change in momentum, very nice objective with a break and test objective as well, nice liquidity to take out, and a very nice liquidity pool, which we talked about, would be this one, since price didn't had that second tap. But these are all high time frame projections, I can't know that in that sense. So coming into the retracement of that monthly bearish leg, we need to do quickly because we do not have a lot of time. Price ended up in discount, changing momentum through inducements, pushing towards the upside. In that sense, after we have mitigated into the yearly IFC, which is pretty nice to see, and I'm gonna show that to you because it's a very nice sign what to expect. What we do see here is, and now listen carefully, because I know you do think we are intraday session traders and scalpers, and yeah, we do not need the 12 months, the yearly time frame, but still it's very important to understand the candles. So after, why I expect that supply not to create lower lows, it's a very important factor. So looking into that last bearish leg, which we have dissected right now on the monthly time frame, we do see that this candle here closed pretty nicely bullish, having a wick to the downside, very nice rejection, which is giving me already signs of price potentially wanting to push higher in that sense. So seeing that previous afterward printing indecision candle, I do not know where price can go, but what I do know is that we closed that yearly IFC. So after the indecision candle, this candle should have been the follow through towards the downside, which would make a lot of sense. And if not that candle, it should be that candle after taking the previous year's highs liquidity, and having that follow through would have been the confirmation to have the continuation towards the downside. But what we do see here is after the indecision candle, price printed ended up closing the year in 2024 with a bearish engulfing towards the downside, which means we should have expected that follow through from this point on. But price afterwards in 2025 ended up, and now that's a very reported sign, to take previous year's liquidity low to the left, which led into a bullish follow through towards the upside. This IFC already being fulfilled within that indecision candle. So after having that sign with that bullish engulfing, everything I do want to take in consideration is more so that price at any time of a fulfillment towards the downside into that IFC can lead to a continuation with that yearly candle towards the upside. This is what my thought process is. So this is how I'm basing myself long term. It's gonna be a fulfillment towards the downside into the IFC, and from there pull higher. In that sense, this is the only sign which is pretty important to take in consideration. And now coming into the weekly, quickly, as we mentioned already, this was the sign we mitigated in the yearly. We had that indecision in price starting to accumulate the range, and after that sign, with that aggressive follow through towards the upside and expansion, we have pretty nice signs and price to play with. Structures, since our weekly bullish leg is gonna be now the higher low, which has taken liquidity at a change in momentum towards the upside and broke structure from that higher high. We know that at any time price can react from any buyer sensitivity area and lead into higher highs. So the current market situation we are in, which we're gonna discuss now, but just to finish the weekly push, what you do want to mark structure wise is that higher low to that higher high, as it's gonna be important, as well as the extreme monthly supply area with the break and test liquidity. Why it's a break and test? We broke structure internally, tested that block, so which means above that orders are still sitting, and this being liquidity as already tested, we mark that as our break and test. Afterwards, we want to mark our weekly bullish push from that higher low to higher high. So that's the most important thing. Within that higher low to that higher high, our buyer sensitivity areas, which are structurally relevant, are sitting downwards to the downside here, and that's being the decisional demand, which absorbed supply, reacted and pushed higher. This is, and afterwards the price tested that POI and continued higher. So we have a pretty nice objective with the break and test and the decisional demand area, which you're gonna mark, and as well we have the extreme demand area, and these two PIs are structure relevant. These are the efficiency of the pullbacks from where you can expect price to create higher highs. But what you can expect if price is on premium areas, since we are here now, is price to at any time start pushing lower to enter the retracement. After the retracement, you want again to have the expansion. So currently I would label ourselves in a complex pullback towards the downside into very nice objectives and targets. All these kind of buyer sensitivity areas, by the way, where you see that they had the inducement and a follow through, are gonna be reactionable in my opinion. And at any time price should continue lower. In that sense, the weekly is done. What we do want still to take in consideration is that we had the buildup of liquidity here and the inducement towards the upside, mitigating into the monthly supply area. So this is a bearish liquidity cycle with having such an aggressive follow through towards the downside with bearish momentum breaking H4 structure, daily structure, because this is our last daily leg from that higher low to that higher high. Markets is fractal. You always need to mark every structure in my opinion. The most important one will be the daily and the H4. After marking that, you see that price broke the structure after the bearish liquidity cycle we were talking about. So I do expect definitely a deeper retracement into discount areas to reach the 50% of the bullish leg here on the weekly, from where I afterwards, as I mentioned, can expect higher highs. So for now, higher time frame, I am based and biased bearish. Looking into that, to clearly see how the previous week's candle closed, it's very bearish engulfing candle, which is giving me pretty nice signs that price might continue at any time lower, depending on which cycle and when we got the cycle towards the upside, which can lead to a bearish follow through. This is what I'm gonna wait for this week, as I do think that can happen, especially because of the previous week's candle closed very bearish with engulfing, like basically having no wick towards the downside, more so closing full volume. This is giving me signs, especially after the major inducement into that buyer sensitivity area, that price can probably react from here, as it's a high time frame demand with a major inducement. But due to the candle closure on the weekly, price can pull lower. This is very important, but for now we are reacting from that buyer sensitivity area. Now coming into the daily time frame, now we know what we know. For now we are bearish. We expect a deeper pullback towards the downside into the weekly push which we have marked. And what we also know for now is that price broke that last higher low to higher high, daily bullish leg. So daily switched bearish, but we do have a major inducement mitigating into buyer sensitivity area, which took liquidity and had a bullish breakout structure follow through towards the upside. So from that POI, price can react as it's doing right now, which we're gonna dissect. It makes as well a lot of sense after we break a lower low to start at any time a retracement towards the upside to then continue lower. This is how market structure work. But looking now into the daily candles, which is gonna be very important. By the way, this area is gonna have of seller sensitivity. So from this area, you definitely can expect price to potentially change momentum, have cycles towards the upside, and a follow through on the daily, which can give you pretty nice sells after fulfillment, and any accumulation to then push the price lower in that sense. So this is what you're gonna mark. It's also important because it was the last pullback which led into the bearish breakout structure and which was the cause of breaking that higher low on the daily. So it's our decisional supply, which is structurally pretty relevant, which you're gonna mark. Now what we can see on the daily, quickly to finish up, we engineered a high here after being in that smart money trap, which I expect to be a smart money trap due to the facts mentioned on the monthly. Price engineered a high, induced that high, had a change in momentum which led into pretty aggressive bearish follow through towards the downside. Now Important candle closures of yesterday's price action is pretty important. We had that rejection immediately. Price ended up fulfilling lower, having any cycle and closing. We're pretty bullish. So now important here is what you need to take in consideration. We have two options. Price either fulfilling towards the downside, this IFC, and continue higher into deeper areas towards the upside, such as the extreme, which is being our efficiency of the pullback of our lower time frame last bearish leg, from that low high to the lower low. Or price taking previous day's high liquidity as we are doing it right now, which can lead into a follow through or at least a retracement towards the downside into that IFC. So these are gonna be our interaction areas for today's price action. What I do expect is potentially a reaction from that supply still, but any fulfillment towards the downside into that IFC, I personally would stop any sells and look how the price is interacting with buyers and sellers, what the price is showing you, which hands, etc. Because here buyer sensitivity area is sitting, and here price took previous highest liquidity, which can lead into a reaction towards the downside as we took liquidity. So this is what I think on the daily time frame. So today maybe you have some selling opportunities after as the price took the previous highest liquidity, which can lead into reaction, but any fulfillment towards the downside into that IFC can pull price higher or pull the daily candle higher and breaking, which would lead into breaking that supply area. This is important for the daily. Now marking things, what we can see on the H4 pretty nicely is our bearish push from that lower high to that lower low, breaking structure. What we're gonna mark again after having that change in momentum in premium after engineering the high end, inducing it, we mark our break and test again. Price broke structure internally, tested that block here, that bearish block, which has taken liquidity internally, which we're gonna mark out this liquidity pool and as well the extreme supply area, which will act as our efficiency of the pullback, from where we can have very nice cycles to then sell. But for now we do see that in discount price has changed momentum, pushing up into that bearish IFC, reacting, failing to create a low, having that weak rejection, which is showing me bullish pressure and a continuation towards the upside. The same here, we see buyers taking over control. We have mitigated it into that bearish IFC, which led to a absorption of that supply, more so but inducing towards the downside and having a pretty aggressive follow through towards the upside. So signing me to that supply being a smart money trap and buyers taking clearly control. So after breaking that internal high, we are having, I just need to prep as I'm as well trading in a few minutes. We have that break here after price absorbed the next supply area. We tested that bullish block here, so we're gonna mark that bullish block to that break and test, as it doesn't make sense to cover that block because it already got consumed towards here. So this is gonna be our objective. So if price comes lower into that area, we can have potentially a push higher, since we do see that this candle is a buyer sensitivity area, which has taken pretty nice liquidity. So any cycle after pushing lower into that area, inducing, showing strength, showing bullish control, can push price higher again. And very important for you guys, this is as well aligning with the daily, which we have mentioned, that I see here. You see that it aligns with the high time frame daily, so you do see it makes sense. Everything makes sense. These are gonna be our interaction areas here again, which is important to call on the H4. We took previous days liquidity into that PY, so for now we can expect a reaction towards the downside into these areas, as this is our last internal bullish push. and we have a pretty nice objective here, being at buyer sensitivity area where price can come to, and again push higher than from there. So as we did take previous days liquidity to the upside, we're gonna hop on the H1 and for now dissect which opportunities we can get. So what I can see here already on the M15 H1, clearly to mention, our current direction is being bearish from that lower to that lower high, creating a lower low, lower high, lower low, inducing that engineered high, and continuing lower, having that nice follow through towards the downside. So our last bearish leg is gonna be from that lower high to that lower low. In that sense, having that bearish leg, our direction is being bearish. Any sells are gonna be pro trend, any buys are gonna be counter trend, labeling it as a retracement trade. If you're gonna buy, it's gonna be more so short term, so you should take more or less 1 to 3s. If you're gonna trade sells, you could have potentials towards the downside, but since we already had that major inducement reacting from a high time frame demand from where buyers took over control, we do not want to sell anywhere. We do want to see how the price is interacting with supply and demand, because I already mentioned for today you can expect a reaction from that supply, but any push lower into that buyer sensitivity area with the break and test can lead into a follow through towards the upside, breaking that supply, because we are currently in the retracement and we do not know when is price gonna expand, when is price gonna retrace. So you always interact with the PYs and with the areas. Looking into that, we can hop on to the M15. So potentially what I'm gonna look for, just you understand my thought process, it's gonna be pretty simple. I'm gonna delete that. What I'm gonna look towards to is have potential sells within that Asia low. Asia low can be pretty nice smart money trap. So any development in my time window, any inducement minorly can lead into an expansion towards the downside into the objective I have labeled and which I have mentioned. So the next option would be why I would sell. I would sell only here in the Asia low smart money trap, because we had a cycle here already, a inducement, pretty nice inducement of a structural high, which is being liquidity, medium liquidity in that bearish POI, which is leading currently into bearish pressure. So continuing with that, I can maybe have a inducement in my time window, nice cycle internally to sell through that Asia low and to my bullish objective which I'm having here. If not, if price breaks at Asia low, I probably gonna wait, because I do not buy. I want to buy in that objective potentially. I do as well not sell. I would only sell if price gives me after the Asia low inducement, because Asia low inducement can push price again higher. I would only sell if I see development like a failure to push higher, a inducement, and 2 legs of bearish structure. I would continue selling or taking it into consideration. So we do see prices getting pretty aggressively, so maybe we're gonna not even get that entry. So the other option would be if price now decides and ends up pushing higher, building up liquidity, I would see that as a smart money trap. Firstly, as it was a Asia high inducement in that sense, failing to create a low if price respects the Asia low. And from that point on, after the inducement, we can have here a bearish objective with a liquidity taken out POI with a break and test, from where I'm gonna trade reversal sells towards the downside, which would mean I will have just still more liquidity left, price engineered more liquidity. In that sense, yeah, these are gonna be the options for the session which I'm gonna look for. So potential buys here, reversal buys, continuation sells if price doesn't break the Asia low, or reversal sells if we take that liquidity. So this is what I'm gonna look for, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and we continue with the session.